The Kattegatt is a 30,000 square kilometers sea area bounded by the Jutlandic peninsula in the west, the Danish Straits Islands of Denmark to the south, and the provinces of Västergötland, Scania, Halland and Bohuslän in Sweden in the east. The Baltic Sea drains into the Kattegatt through the Danish Straits. The sea area is a continuation of the Skagerrak and may be seen as a bay of the Baltic Sea of the North Sea, or as in traditional Scandinavian usage, neither of these. The Kattegatt is a rather shallow sea and can be very difficult and dangerous to navigate, due to the many sandy and stony reefs and tricky currents that often shift. In modern times, artificial seabed channels have been dug. Many reefs have been dredged by either sand pumping or stone fishing, and a well-developed light signaling network has been installed to safeguard the very heavy international traffic of this small sea. There are several large cities and major ports in the Kattegatt, including Gothenburg, Aarhus, Aalborg, Halmstad and Frederikshavn, mentioned by descending size and importance. Geography. According to the definition established in a 1932 convention signed by Denmark, Norway and Sweden, the northern boundary between the Kattegatt and Skagerrak is found at the northernmost point of Skagen on Jutland, while the southern boundary towards Öresund is found at the tip of Kullen Peninsula in Scania. Waterways that drain into the Kattegatt are the rivers of Göta älv, Gothenburg, together with the Lagan, Nysän, Atran and Viskan in the province of Halland on the Swedish side, and the river of Gudene in Jutland, in Denmark. The main islands of the Kattegatt of Samsø, Laso and Anholt, the latter two are, due to the relatively dry climate, situated in what is called the Danish desert belt. A number of noteworthy coastal areas about the Kattegatt, including the Kullaberg Nature Reserve in Scania, Sweden, which contains a number of rare species and a scenic rocky shore, the town of Molly, which has a picturesque harbour and views into the Kullaberg, and Skagen at the northern tip of Denmark. Since the 1950s, a bridge project usually referred to as Kattegattbroen connecting Jutland and Zealand across the Kattegatt has been considered. Since the late 2000s, the project has seen a renewed interest from several influential politicians in Denmark. The bridge is usually envisioned as connecting HOV with Samsø and Kalundborg. Extent. The International Hydrographic Organization defines the limits of the Kattegatt Sound and belts as follows: on the north, a line joining Skagen and Paternos to Skar and thence northeastward through the shoals to Tjorn Island. On the south, the limits of the Baltic Sea in the belts and Sound. In the Little Belt, a line joining Fullshoft and Vegsnesnacker. In the Great Belt, a line joining Gulstaff and Kapelkirk on the island of Lolland. In the Sound, a line joining Steve's Lighthouse and Falsterbo Point. Etymology. According to Den Store Danske Encyclopedia New Dansk Ordbog, the name derives from the Dutch words cat and gat. It derives from late medieval navigation jargon, in which captains of the Hanseatic trading fleets would compare the Danish straits to a hole so narrow that even a cat would have difficulty squeezing its way through, on account of the many reefs and shallow waters. At one point, the passable waters were a mere 3.84 kilometers wide. The name of the Copenhagen street Kattesunde has a comparable etymological meaning, namely, narrow passage. An archaic name for both the Skagerrak and Kattegatt was the Norwegian Sea, Jutland Sea. Its ancient Latin name was Sinus Scodanus. History. Control of the Kattegatt, and access to it, have been important throughout the history of international seafaring. Until the completion of the Ida Canal in 1784, the Kattegatt was the only water route into and out of the Baltic region. Since 1429 in the Middle Ages, the Danish royal family, and later the state of Denmark, has prospered greatly from the Sound dues charged for passage through the Øresund. while Copenhagen provided shelter, trade and repair opportunities and protection from piracy. The dues were eventually lifted in 1857. Biology. In the Kattegatt, the salinity has a pronounced two-layer structure. The upper layer has a salinity between and the lower layer, separated by a strong halocline at around 15 meters, has a salinity between 32 to. The lower layer consists of inflowing seawater from the Skagerrak, with a salinity on level with most other coastal seawaters, while the upper layer consists of inflowing seawater from the Baltic Sea and has a much lower salinity, comparable to brackish water, but still a great deal higher than the rest of the Baltic Sea. These two opposing flows transports a net surplus of 475 cubic kilometers seawater from the Baltic to the Skagerrak every year. During stronger winds, the layers in the Kattegatt are completely mixed in some places, such as the Great Belt, so the overall salinity is very variable in this small sea. This sets some unique conditions for the sea life here. Ecological collapse. The Kattegatt was one of the first marine dead zones to be noted in the 1970s, when scientists began studying how intensive industrial activities affected the natural world. In recent years, studies and research has provided much insight into processes like eutrophication and how to deal with it. Denmark and the EU have initiated costly and far-reaching domestic projects in order to stop, repair and prevent these environmentally destructive and economically damaging processes. Since the first action plan for the aquatic environment in 1985, and are now busy implementing the fourth action plan. The action plan sums up a broad range of initiatives and includes the so-called nitrate directives. The action plans have generally been viewed as a success, although the work is not finished and all goals are not completely met yet. Protections and regulation. Due to the very heavy sea traffic and many large coastal settlements, Kattegatt has been designated as a sulfur emission control area as part of the Baltic Sea since 2006. The benchmark for sulfur in fuels was recently lowered to 0.1% to be effectuated from 1 January 2015. Several larger areas of the Kattegatt are designated as Natura 2000 and under various bird protections such as the Ramsar Convention. The remaining larger shallow reefs are among the protections, as they are important spawning and feeding grounds for fish and marine mammals, and they support a thriving but threatened biodiversity. Protected areas includes Denmark-Grenen, the Bay of Aalborg, comprising a 1,774 square kilometers shallow sea area, beach meadows on Laso and the stony reefs south of the island, Anholt and the sea north of the island. Sweden. The Nordre Elv estuary north of Gothenburg are an important spot for migratory birds and fish. The Vrango archipelago, part of the archipelago of Gothenburg, are an important reproduction area for seabirds and seals. Kungsbacka Fjord, a shallow water fjord between Gothenburg and Varberg, including important salt marshes. Hofsala, Kulleberg Nature Reserve, Gallery.